Go Jason.
Actually, this is a video.
All
Oh,
right.
is it really?
All right. Hi, my name is Timothy Miller. I reported aboard the Jason July of 1977. It was in the middle of an overhaul. Remember us going into the dry dock and people living in the barracks on 32nd Street. If you go on the Facebook site, you'll see some pictures that I took of the Jason in the dry dock, so those are pretty neat to look at. I got put into fire party. I was pretty new on the ship, and my first night of fire party, we were all grouped together on the 01 level, berthing back by Radio 2, and about 11 o'clock at night, the bells start flashing and the lights start ringing, and we were told flooding forward. And so we all got dressed and headed up, and if you remember, in front of the scullery there was a trunk that went down all the way to the keel, and at the lower level of that trunk was the DC storeroom. And if you peered down the opening, you'd see water lapping down there. It seems that when they were doing the overhaul, they were taking out the magazines for the 5-inch guns, and they were making those contaminated holding tanks for the new law for ships not able to dump within 20 miles of the coast or something like that. So anyway, the piping, when it would go through a watertight bulkhead, would have 2 flanges on each side with bolts through it, and someone forgot to put all the bolts in the flange. And then the shipyard workers were going to test the watertight integrity of this new contaminated holding tank, and it backed over into the next compartment and started flooding up. So all of our dewatering equipment, all the DC equipment, was down underneath the water. So we started worrying, and the officer at the deck was worrying, because we had more water inside the ship, and it wasn't designed to hold water inside the ship when it's on the blocks and dry dock. So we went to different ships trying to get eductors or perijets. We were putting fire hoses down into the water and capping them off and trying to create a suction or a siphon. I remember there was like 50,000 gallons or something like this of water that was inside the hull of the Jason while it's up on blocks and dry dock. So I was told it could squish itself if we hadn't taken the water out of it. So that was kind of a good introduction to dry dock or even fire party. When we went to leave the dry dock, they had a portable diesel generator up on the boat deck, and that was giving power to the ship because our engines obviously were not working, and the auxiliary diesel was being overhauled. So they had this great big cat diesel up on the boat deck that was supplying electricity. Well, I was an R4. I came aboard as a ETSN, and I had worked as a welder previously to being in the Navy, and during the overhaul, being a welder was kind of a skate thing to do because I didn't have to ship paint. They wanted me to do stuff around the shop, so I did a lot of welding. And when the ship was coming out of the dry dock, we were all kind of hanging over the side, the lifelines, watching everything. And my boss was ET1 Hank. Name blank. Anyway, Hank, and that was not his last name, it'll come to me in a minute. Hank told me, what are you doing goofing off out here? Aren't you supposed to be working in that new storeroom and welding the storeroom? And I said, well, I didn't think I should be welding when we're not on shore power, we're coming off that generator. And he says, quit giving me excuses, get back to work. Well, the Jason was built as an ARH-1, which was a heavy hull repair ship. And it was built to repair battleships. And if you are an old timer, you'll remember that along the starboard side, there were a lot of welding outlet boxes up on the side of the ceiling there, or on the overhead. And this allowed the ship during World War II to have 30 guys welding on the next ship over, repairing damage. And so back by the divers, there was a little storeroom, and it had 2 motor generator sets that would take the AC power and convert it to DC power. And these motor generator sets were about 2 feet in diameter. Well, that created a very nice DC for welding, but it also consumed a lot of electricity. So I went back and pushed the button to start up the motor generator sets, and I noticed that the light bulb dimmed as a motor generator set tried to start up. And I remember hearing the diesel engine kind of really throttle down, and then all of a sudden the lights went out and the diesel engine went way up high, and then it got very quiet and very dark. And I heard later that the Navy had to pay the rental company a lot of money for repair of their diesel generator. After the overhaul, we took a trip up to San Francisco, and down in the pipe shop, or one of the weld shops, somebody took some pipe and some wood and made like a shotgun, and then somebody else is making like a Thompson submachine gun. And so when we went up to San Francisco, a whole bunch of guys were running around on the weather decks and stuff like that, going, you're dead, and shooting each other. And us ETs, we didn't have any weapons, so we had to revert to taking heat shrink tubing and making blow darts out of them, and so we started shooting people with those, and they said that's not fair because we had live ammunition. Westpac was in '79. It was memorable in that when we left Japan, we were the first Navy ship to leave Japan with women as part of the crew. We had a couple of officers and a couple of midshipmen women. The Japanese news crews were there interviewing, and they had a helicopter filming, because at that time women's rights and women's lib hadn't hit Japan before, so this was quite a newsworthy event. When we were in the Philippines, we were dodging a couple of hurricanes, and so one night there was a hurricane warning, or a typhoon warning, and so we went out and anchored in the harbor with just the duty crew. And it was about 2 or 3 in the afternoon when the people that were off the ship on Liberty finally made it out to the Jason. I don't think the skipper was too happy about that. When we came back from the Westpac, we started getting our complement of women, and we went down to Acapulco. That was a fun trip. I left the Jason on October 1st, 1980, the day that the Jason went on Westpac. By that time I was an ET2, and that was the last that I saw an active Jason. I saw the ship a couple of times when I was up in the mothball fleet, Sassoon Bay, but it was in among other ships, so it was hard to really pick out, so it wasn't easy to get a picture of it. I ended up retiring, and I live in San Diego, so you'll see a couple of my posts on Facebook where I'm doing things around the USS Midway. My son is autistic, and he works on the Midway. he happens to be a legacy because my father was on the Midway. So I guess I'll always have some part of me that is around the Navy. Thanks for listening.
Hey, well, that's all I have today, folks. Thanks for stopping by Holistic Health Talk. And don't forget, like and share. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And we'll see you in our next video at Holistic Health Talk.